Hi, my name is Andrew Henderson from Nomad Capitalist, nomadcapitalist.com, and in this brief introductory video, I'm going to share 5 reasons why every serious cryptocurrency investor and business owner needs to have a second passport and needs to have a second residence permit outside of their home country. Now, I've spent the last 10 years researching and obtaining things like second passports, second residencies, and internationalizing my life to give myself more options, and we help people do that at Nomad Capitalist. But I think that cryptocurrency is an especially interesting area to where people, particularly in the Western world, really need to protect themselves and take a little bit of their crypto wealth to ensure the long-term viability of their crypto investing. And so here are the top 5 reasons why every serious crypto investor needs a second passport. Number 1 is really the opportunity cost. This applies largely to US citizens, but can apply to citizens of other countries as well, as government bodies step up enforcement, step up regulation on things like ICOs. So I've had a number of US crypto investors come to me and say, I can't participate in certain ICOs because they don't want US address, they don't want a US residence permit, they don't want US citizens. Now, occasionally somebody says, hey, I'm just going to circumvent the rules and use some shortcut. But as regulations get bigger and bigger, I see a big challenge, especially for US citizens, but also other Western countries, where people like the Securities and Exchange Commission and others are going to come through and make it very difficult to invest in ICOs. I literally had one guy come seeking my help because he's saying, I'm losing millions of dollars in opportunities by not being able to buy these coins that I want to because they won't accept me as a US citizen. So that's number 1, opportunity cost. Number 2 is if you can get into deals, and if you're already invested in crypto, there is definitely a tax exposure. Now, this is not a video for the crypto anarchists who plan on just keeping everything offline and living in their basement. But if you're looking to take the cryptos, have them on an exchange, turn them into other kinds of wealth, buy real estate, facilitate other stuff, governments are really stepping up enforcement on taxes. And you've seen what happened with CoinDesk and the IRS, where there's a lot more information sharing going on. That's been a global trend for years in the offshore industry, with lots more information sharing, governments being much more aggressive against banks and a lot of other places. And you see a lot of regulation with many of these exchanges. I think that many of them will cooperate, and a lot of people are going to be getting a knock on their door, as very little cryptocurrency capital gains or trading profits have actually been reported on taxes. So again, for US citizens, if you're trading or if you're earning capital gains, it doesn't matter where in the world that you live, you're going to pay tax on those as a US citizen. So having a second passport gives you the ability to potentially not be a US citizen, so you can, as I would say, go where you're treated best and go to a country where they don't tax you, and both live in and be a citizen of a country where they're not going to tax your trading activities at the new crazy rates, or where they're not going to tax you on capital gains when you sell your cryptos. So for people who are from Australia, from the UK, from Canada, from other countries, you may not necessarily have to give up your citizenship, but having a residence permit would actually help, and being able to live outside of your home country would allow you to stop the taxes on future gains and on future trades. So that's really important. Number 3 is really uncertainty. We see, as I talked about, a lot of regulation coming for cryptocurrencies. What's the US going to do? What's the SEC going to do? What are other countries around the world going to do? And how is that going to impact your ability to hold these assets? What's going to happen with the banking system and your ability to convert it into that? What are the rules going to be if you want to take those cryptos and put them out into other assets? And so again, if you can distance yourself from your home country, or if you can have another option in your back pocket, be it a place that you have a residence permit for and a place that you have a passport for, you have the option to break free of one country if they start to make your life very difficult with lots of regulations. And I think that there are going to be more and more restrictions on people who want to use their cryptos in the real world, and it's going to become much more difficult. To that point, number 4 is liquidity. With more regulations, what are the banks going to do if you want to cash things out? If I understand certainly there's plenty of non-bank ways to use cryptos, but again, for that person who wants to own other assets eventually, I see liquidity potentially as being an issue with more regulation. And the number 5 reason to have a second passport and second residency if you are a crypto investor is if you're running as an active business. I recently spoke with someone who actually did an ICO and raised a lot of money. And as a US citizen, they have a big US tax bill. Even though he's living outside of the US, he's going to actually pay millions of dollars in taxes because he's running this active business in cryptos. Whereas if he were able to distance himself from the United States, he would have been able to save that millions of dollars and obviously put that back into his next business or into anything that he wanted. So as you can see, you've got a couple of issues with cryptos. You've got Western countries increasingly stepping up enforcement for tax, stepping up regulations that makes it harder to operate, and just making life difficult for people. Now, if you're a US citizen, I think that this is really a top priority because the US government will follow you no matter where you go. They have regulations of all sorts for US citizens, even if you're living overseas. And so having a second passport as a US citizen is a way to have a call option that if things get too difficult, that you have an option to go somewhere else. For everyone else who's not a US citizen, but for other Western citizens, having a residence permit and having a place to go is, I think, equally important. If you can get out of Australia and you can say, hey, I have cryptos worth $1 million now, I paid $500,000 for them, I think they're going to 10 million, you can actually save a lot of money. And the government doesn't want you to know about this. They don't even want you to be in cryptos, but they don't want you to know that there are ways to take back control. And so having a residence permit and setting up a proper strategy where you actually leave the country that you're in allows you to get a lot more benefits. And especially, I think, more and more entities are going to have difficulty dealing with US citizens and possibly other Western citizens where there are regulations. So if you can say, hey, I'm living over here, whether it's in Eastern Europe, whether it's in South America, whether it's somewhere in Asia, whether it's in the Middle East, if you can say, hey, here's where I'm living, then there's an advantage. So I really think that any crypto investor should look at both. US citizens especially should need a second passport, but you never know what other countries may do. You never know as the laws get more and more draconian. If you've turned, as some people I know have, turned $1,000 into $100,000 or $5,000 into $1 million, take a small sliver of that, go out and get some kind of second passport so that you have an option that you keep in your back pocket. Some US citizens may want to exercise that option right away. Other citizens, I think it's just good to have in your back pocket. The residence permit, on the other hand, is basically saying, hey, here's where I live. So if you get that second passport, then you can go and say, hey, I live in this crypto-friendly country. I'm not living in Australia or the US where there's all kinds of issues. So the two really work hand in hand as a great series of options, not only to be proactive now in increasing your opportunities, but to make sure that you're covered and you've got a backup plan for later. And so depending on where you're from and depending on your approach, one or both of those may play a different role at different times. The question is, where do you get a residence? Where do you get a second passport? With residences, there are many different options, and it's important to consider your lifestyle, where you want to go, how you want to set up your life. As to passports, there are a lot of different options. We have tons of videos here on our Nomad Capitalist channel where we talk about different passport options. For a lot of crypto investors, the goal is to put out as little money as possible, but also to get the passport quickly, because especially if you're a US citizen, you may want that option in a matter of months, because every month that goes by, you might be losing money by not being in ICOs or by paying taxes on your trades. So one of the options that's worth considering is going to one of the citizenship by investment programs, making a donation. We've talked about that a lot on nomadcapitalist.com and here on our channel. From $100,000 and up, you can make a donation, you can pay some legal fees on top of that, and you can get a passport in a matter of months. And if you're operating at a serious level, the ROI on that could be almost instant, or it could be very quick. There are other passport opportunities that are worth considering, particularly for folks who have crypto as a big piece of their assets, but also have fiat cash or other assets in a different pile that they can draw from. There are other countries where you can go and invest in things like property, where you can go and start a business, where you can go and do other things and get a passport in 6 months, 12 months, etc. There's actually a new program out. You can get a passport in 1 to 2 months, by making an investment into property. And so which passport you should get depends on whether you're single, whether you're married, which country you come from, which countries you want to be able to travel to. If you're a US citizen, do you want to go back to the United States at some point in the future? There's a lot of different factors that you have to consider. If you want to find more about how you can set up a passport and residence strategy as a crypto investor, you can go to nomadcapitalist.com. You can check out our resources. You can ask for some help, and you can work with us to develop that strategy. But it's definitely something that you want, if not an active and a proactive strategy, you want a defensive strategy that you can always keep in your back pocket. And as somebody who has obtained second citizenships, I can tell you that it's a whole different outlook on life once you have that option. Once you know, hey, if I don't like it here, I can leave. And I've done that as well for different reasons. So definitely subscribe to our channel, check out all the videos, and if you are a serious crypto investor, you're going to want to check out nomadcapitalist.com and find out how you can put together a plan to protect yourself.